Good afternoon, class. Here is the explanation video of the chapter, The Golden Age of the Empire. After the fall of the Mauryas, many small kingdoms arose throughout India between 200 BCE and CE 300. In eastern India, central India, and the Deccan, the Mauryas were succeeded by a number of native rulers such as the Shungas, the Kanvas, and the Satavahanas. In northwest India, they were succeeded by Indo Greeks, Sakas, and Kushanas. In the south, the Cholas, Cheras, and Pandyas rose to power. In the 4th century CE, a new dynasty, the Gupta dynasty, began its rule in India. It was founded by Sri Gupta. Sri Gupta ruled over Patliputra and its neighboring areas. Now, the sources. Travelers' account, such as those of Fahen and Teasting and works of Kalidas, are the main sources which provide us a lot of information about this period. As far as the archaeological sources are concerned, Allahabad pillar inscription, coins, and paintings give us detail about the Gupta period. The rise of the Gupta Empire in the CE 320 is one of the most important events in Indian history. India made progress in many fields under the Gupta kings. This period is also referred as Golden Age of Indian history. The rule of the Gupta kings lasted for more than 200 years. This period saw considerable achievements in the field of Indian culture, especially in the areas of art, architecture, and literature. The Gupta period is also considered to be classic age of Indian culture. What is Gupta period also considered as? It is also considered as the classic age of Indian culture. About Chandragupta, the first independent and important ruler of the Gupta Empire was Chandragupta I. He raised the power and prestige of his empire through conquest and marriages. He married a Lichavi princess from Nepal and thereby extended his empire. His empire included Magad, Prayag, and Saket. Magad is also known as Bihar, Prayag as Allahabad, and Saket as Ayodhya. He assumed the title Maharaja Dhiraj, that is, the King of Kings. He started the Gupta era in 320 CE, which marked the date of his accession. He was succeeded by his son Samudragupta. We have already studied about Chandragupta, so I'm not explaining more on it. Now, Samudragupta, as we all know that he was the son of Chandragupta. After Chandragupta I, Samudragupta came to power. The most important historical source of information about Samudragupta is the Allahabad pillar inscription, which was composed by his court poet Harisena. Samudragupta was a great conqueror and he won a series of wars in North and South India. He defeated as many 9 rulers in northern India and 12 rulers in eastern Deccan and southern India. But Samudragupta did not want to gain permanent possession of his conquest in the south because he knew he could not control South India from his capital. He was happy with the tributes collected from the defeated princes of the south, bringing home large stores of treasures. Thus, Samudragupta's empire was mainly confined to North India, apart from being a great conqueror. He also patronized scholars and literary figures. He was a good musician and also an expert veena player. Samudragupta used to play veena. He was a follower of Hinduism but was tolerant towards other religions. His court poet Harisena has eulogized his achievements in the Allahabad pillar inscriptions. Now, Chandragupta II. Chandragupta II was the son and successor of Samudragupta. He was known as Vikramaditya. Samudragupta was the son of Chandragupta I, and Samudragupta's son was Vikramaditya. Fahen's account forms the historical source of information about Chandragupta II. Chandragupta II was a great conqueror. His greatest achievement was to destroy the power of the Shakas from Malwa, Gujarat, and Saurashtra permanently. He gained control over three important ports of Bharuch, Cambay, and Sopara. He also assumed the title Shakari, or also known as Sakari, the conqueror of the Shakars. His vast empire extended from river Brahmaputra in the east to Arabian Sea in the west. His empire touched Himalayas in the north and river Narmada in the south. He was, he was a great conqueror and a good administrator who ruled from his capital Ujjain. Who was a great ruler and conqueror? Samudragupta was a great conqueror and a good administrator who ruled from the capital Ujjain. He was a great patron of art and literature. He had at his court and famous Navratans. The most learned men of his time, poet Kalidas was one of them. The iron pillar near the Qutub Minar and the Mehrauli was probably installed by him. His exploits are glorified in its inscriptions. Chandragupta's successors. Kumar Gupta succeeded his father Chandragupta II in CE 412. There was peace and prosperity during his reign. He was followed by Skand. The Huns from Central Asia invaded the Gupta Empire during his reign. Skandgupta defeated them and forced them to retreat, but the later Gupta kings were weak and incapable rulers. Gradually, the provinces became independent. By the beginning of the 6th century CE, the Huns captured almost the whole of northwestern India, including Punjab, Rajputana, and Malwa. Now, about the Gupta administration. The Gupta rulers who took titles such as Mahathiraj managed their administration very efficiently. The empire was divided into provinces. These provinces were further divided into various districts. There were district councils which held the provincial governors. The provinces were known as bhuktis and the district were known as vaishyas. Each bhukti was placed under the charge of an uparika and each vaishya under a vaishyapati. There were many officers who assisted kings in his work. The provinces were under the charge of princes. They were assisted by officials called kum- Kumar Matyas. The villages were looked after by Gramapati. The Gupta king was assisted by the Mahadantanayak, a high official to maintain law and order in the empire. The Manusmriti was followed to impart justice. Patliputra was the most flourishing city in this period. The salaries of the officers were paid in cash by the early Gupta rulers, but later on they were paid through land grants. Society. The society was divided into various castes and subcastes, but most of the people lived in harmony. One group among them, the untouchables, were badly treated by others. From Fahen's writings, we come to know that both Buddhists and Brahmins lived in peace with each other. The wealth and prosperity of the people is also mentioned in Fahen's writing. Caste system had become rigid and the position of women and Shudras declined. Land grants to the Brahmins on a large scale proved that their supremacy continued in Gupta times. But during this period, the untouchable increased in numbers, mainly the Chandalas. Fahin informs us that the Chandalas lived outside the village and dealt in meat and flesh. The upper caste kept a distance from them for fear of being polluted. Child marriage and practice of sati were prevalent. Women remained uneducated and did not participate in any social or political activity. Trade. Inland as well as foreign trade flourished in Gupta period. Trade was mainly carried by land, routes and waterways. Ujjain, Patliputra, Benares, now which is also known as Varanasi now, Mathura, Tamralipati were the famous trade centers. Trade with distant countries like Africa, Arabia, and East India also increased during the Gupta period. Trade was also carried with Rome, Burma, Java, and Cambodia. Tamluk became an important port. Prosperous trade relations with many parts of the world were undertaken by the Gupta rulers from this port. The main items of export were spices, precious stones, silk, sandalwood, indigo, and herbs. Important imports were silk, ivory, and horses. That's all for today's class. In the next class, we'll study about the religion, art and architecture, literature, and science of the Gupta Empire. Okay, class? Thank you so much.